Thanks everybody for coming. We called this group together because it has become amply clear to all Americans that we have a real problem in the economy. And the first step to solving that problem, of course, is recognizing its nature and that we have one. And that makes it all the more incredible that it was just 2 weeks ago that my opponent, Christopher Shays, said our economy is fundamentally strong, no one can disagree with that. Well, he could not be more wrong. And as we see the foundations of our nation's economy unraveling, crumbling in the morning's newspapers every single day, it is really important that we consider who's proposing what and who is going to move forward how on this most essential of issues. We talk about the economy. One of the many ways in which the economy is not fundamentally strong is the fact that 600,000 Americans have lost their jobs since January. So while economics is complicated and laden with statistics, it makes a very real difference to the people of this district. Chris Shays says the fundamentals of our economy are strong. Since he said that, we witnessed the collapse and the bailout of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, the buyout of Merrill Lynch, and just yesterday, $85 billion of taxpayer money made available for what was essentially the transfer of control of AIG to the people of the United States. We're now in the midst of what any number of analysts are calling one of the worst financial crises since the Great Depression. As a result of this, apart from the 600,000 Americans who have lost their jobs, in the coming months people are going to find it harder to pay bills, to save for retirement, to get a loan, to buy a first home. And I think a lot of people are saying to themselves today, thank goodness we didn't take the advice of Chris Shays and George Bush and put some of our Social Security dollars into the stock market. One of the critical aspects of figuring out where we need to go from here, of course, is figuring out how we got here and making sure we've got people in Washington who understand that and who understand the severity of the crisis rather than denying that one exists. The answer in terms of how we got here, we are here fundamentally because over a period of years, Washington has taken the referee off the field. Our financial sector, which is constantly innovating, constantly developing more complex securities, constantly combining, was basically left governed by a regulatory structure that was created in the 1930s. Chris Shays was among those who bought into the Republican anti-regulation ideology. He said, and this is a quote, "The last thing I like seeing is regulation." And now we're all learning what the sweeping and devastating consequences of that attitude are. Now, I worked in financial services for 12 years. So I understand the power and the importance of free markets, but I also understand that unless we put in place a competent, smart, and streamlined regulatory apparatus, we will be here again. And in Congress, that's what I'm going to focus on doing. Reform and streamline the regulatory framework of our financial services industry so that the vibrance and the energy of that sector continues to do what it has done, but doesn't end as we have seen it end in the last couple of weeks. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time on some of the principles that I think are going to be really critical to where Washington must take the regulatory structure without getting into too much detail. First and foremost, we need to significantly streamline the regulatory apparatus. Right now, various financial institutions are regulated by the Federal Reserve, by the Securities Exchange Commission, by the Office of Thrift Supervision, by state banking institutions, by the FDIC. We have a Rube Goldberg regulatory apparatus which doesn't serve its purpose. And of course, since the repeal of Glass-Steagall, which was fully supported by Chris Shays, we have seen financial institutions combine, grow, and become more complex in ways that I don't think anybody ever predicted. And of course, the regulatory apparatus didn't evolve to reflect this new degree of size, complexity, and interrelationship. So we are going to streamline the financial regulator so that it is very clear who is regulating what activity. And it will be activity-based rather than legal status-based. Because of course now you have entities that are combinations of commercial banks, investment banks, and even unregulated hedge fund type operations. Second principle that I think is very important, transparency. This means a bunch of different things. It means focusing more on risk measures looking at capital adequacy in light of the risks that our financial institutions are now taking, and making sure that our securities are traded over exchanges that are transparent. Third principle, we do not want to, through changing our regulatory structure, move our financial services operations abroad into less heavily regulated jurisdictions. And so I would say we need to work very closely with the Europeans, with the Asians, with all money centers to make sure that we are beginning to align our regulatory structure so that we are in fact regulating globally what has become a global industry. Fourth, and this isn't necessarily the purview of the government, but one of the critical failures in the system was the performance of the credit rating agencies, who right up until subprime mortgage products crashed and burned were telling us that they were fundamentally healthy. We need an overhaul of how credit rating agencies evaluate securities and how soon they sound the alarm when there's a problem. And then finally, and this is something that government should encourage and that is in the interest of every single American, our corporations must be more beholden to stockholders. There's a lot of discussion right now about CEO pay and who got paid how much to drive which company into the ground. And it highlights an important fact, which is that our risk-reward system within many of our corporations, but certainly within our financial institutions, is designed to assure that managers and shareholders are rewarded when things go well, but as we've now seen in the last week, that the taxpayer gets left holding the bag when things go poorly. So one of the solutions to that, of course, is making sure that our shareholders truly are controlling our corporate boards and encouraging compensation and other evaluations of corporate performance to be longer term as opposed to shorter term. So I'm going to stop there and close with the notion that we called this because we're at a very critical moment in this country's history with respect to how the economy is going to evolve in the coming years. It is essential that we have people in Washington who understand both the complexities of our economy, our financial sector, and who understand the day-to-day lives of the people in this district, which, given Chris Shea's quote that our economy is fundamentally strong, no one can disagree with that. I would submit to you that that is not Chris Shea's.